He spent 15 years marinating in noise. The ping of incoming emails, the buzz of text messages, the chime of Slack notifications, the endless scroll of Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit, repeat. His brain has been trained relentlessly and expertly to crave stimulation. Every time he reaches for his phone, he's rewarded with a tiny hit of dopamine. Every time he stays with the discomfort of silence, he's punished with the gnawing sense that he's missing something important. It's not his fault. It's not a moral failing. It's just neurochemistry. But try telling that to a 31-year-old man lying in bed at 11:47 p.m., listening to his neighbor's Coldplay playlist, wondering why he can and do something that millions of people do every day without even thinking about it. The phrase, meditation person, lives in David's head like a closed door. He's not a meditation person. Meditation people wake up at 5 a.m. and drink lemon water and sit cross-legged on cushions that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. Meditation people have calm voices and still hands and the ability to hear a notification buzz without immediately lunging for their phone. David is not those things. David is a person who hits snooze 3 times and drinks coffee black and has a permanent tension ridge between his eyebrows from squinting at screens. He is a person who forgets his mother's birthday and loses his keys twice a week and spends Sunday evenings in a low-grade panic about Monday morning. He is not a meditation person. He is just a person who tried and failed and tried again and failed again and eventually stopped trying because the failure felt worse than the noise. But here's the question that keeps David awake on Tuesday nights. Long after the neighbor's Coldplay playlist has ended and the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator and his own uneven breath. What if meditation person isn't a category you're born into? What if it's just a decision you make over and over to stay in the room with yourself? What if the voice that says, asterisk, you're not good at this, you're not built for this, you should just give up, asterisk, what if that voice isn't telling the truth? What if it's just afraid? On April 15, 2024, David receives an email from his company's wellness department. Subject line, asterisk, your mindfulness journey continues, asterisk, he almost deletes it. His thumb hovers over the trash icon. But something makes him pause, maybe the blue light, maybe the boredom, maybe the faint hope that this time will be different, and he opens it. The email announces a new partnership with a meditation research lab at NU. They're studying attention training for high-stimulus professionals. They're looking for volunteers. The commitment is 15 minutes a day for 8 weeks. David reads the email 3 times. His thumb hovers over the Learn More button. He thinks about the Muse headband in his sock drawer. He thinks about the 47 snoozed calendar events. He thinks about the British woman and the Australian man and the golden light that would travel and the storm sounds that would unstop. He closes the email. He tells himself he'll come back to it later. He never does. Here's the statistic that would change everything for David if he knew it. In 2024, researchers at UC Berkeley studied 5,000 adults who tried meditation for the first time. They tracked their progress, their drop-off rates, their reasons for quitting. 67% of participants admitted to cheating during guided sessions. They skipped ahead, they multitasked. They opened other apps while the meditation was still playing. They faked completion reports to make their corporate wellness dashboards look better. 67%. David thinks he's alone. He thinks his inability to sit still is a personal failing, a unique flaw in an otherwise functional human being. He thinks everyone else has figured out the secret, and he's the only one still struggling. But 67% of people are cheating. 67% of people are lying in bed with the blue light on their faces, pretending to be calm, faking their way through a practice that's supposed to be about authenticity. 67%. David isn't the exception. He's the rule. Tuesday night, 11:52 p.m., the neighbor's Coldplay playlist has moved on to Yellow. The opening guitar riff drifts through the wall, muted and familiar. David is still scrolling. He's looking at a photo of his ex-girlfriend at a wedding. She's wearing a blue dress. She's smiling at someone off camera. The photo was posted 6 hours ago. He's looked at it 17 times. His thumb hovers over the screen. He wants to close the app. He wants to put the phone down. He wants to be the kind of person who can hear a song and just listen without reaching for something to fill the space. But his thumb doesn't move. The song keeps playing. The blue light keeps shining. The refrigerator keeps humming. And David keeps lying there, caught between who he is and who he wants to be, unable to close the distance. This is the lie he believes. The lie isn't that meditation is hard. The lie isn't that silence is uncomfortable. The lie isn't even that his brain is broken. The lie is that he's the only one. The lie is that everyone else has figured it out. That everyone else is sitting cross-legged on their expensive cushions, breathing in golden light, feeling the wind blow through their calm and focused minds. That everyone else has found the door and walked through it. David is still standing outside, pressing his ear against the wood, wondering why he can't hear anything on the other side. The lie is that he's alone in this.
The bass from his neighbor's speaker pulsed through the wall again. Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. And there was the opening piano chords of clocks bleeding into his studio apartment on Chicago's West Loop. David pressed his palms against his eyes until he saw colors. He spent $240 on a Muse headband that was supposed to track his brainwaves and teach him to meditate. It had been sitting in his sock drawer since January. It was April now. He wasn't lazy. He was a marketing director at a health tech startup. He woke up at 5:45 a.m. for days a week. He meal prepped on Sundays. He'd read 37 books last year according to his Goodreads challenge. But when he sat down to meditate, when he closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind, something terrible happened. His brain screamed, not in words. It was more like the feeling of reaching for your phone and realizing you left it in an Uber. That hollow panic. That desperate scramble. David wasn't alone in this. He just didn't know it yet, and because he believes he's alone, he doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't mention the Muse headband in his sock drawer. He doesn't admit to the 47 snoozed calendar events. He doesn't text his friend Alex and say, *K, do you ever feel like your brain is a browser with 47 tabs open and you can't find the one that's playing music? He just lies there, in the blue light, listening to the piano, waiting for something to change. At 11:59 p.m., David locks his phone. The screen goes dark. The blue light disappears. The room settles into the gray dimness of a Chicago spring night, streetlight filtering through blinds that haven't been adjusted since he moved in. The neighbor's playlist has moved on. A different song now, something slower. David doesn't recognize it. He places the phone on the nightstand, face down. The screen doesn't light up. No notifications, no buzzing. No urgent demands for his attention. He stares at the ceiling. The ceiling is white. There's a small crack near the corner, branching outward like a river delta. He's looked at this crack every night for 2 years. He's never really seen it. His breathing slows. The song through the wall swells and fades. A voice, distant and muffled, singing something about stars and skin and swimming. David closes his eyes. For 3 seconds, for seconds, 5 seconds there is nothing. No scrolling, no planning, no rehearsing, no replaying of old conversations and old mistakes and old photographs of ex-girlfriends in blue dresses. Just the ceiling, just the song, just the sound of his own breath, moving in and out, in and out, in and out. Then his eyes open, his hand reaches for the phone. The screen lights up, the blue light returns. It's 12:03 a.m. He has a 9 a.m. with Priya. He should be asleep. He scrolls. This is the before, not the before of dramatic transformation or rock bottom or everything changes now. Just the ordinary before, the before of another Tuesday night, another sleepless hour, another scroll through the highlights of lives that seem so much more together than his own. But here's what David doesn't know, lying there in the blue light. Tomorrow, his college roommate is going to send him a telegram message. Tomorrow a file is going to land in his phone with a name that doesn't make sense and a frequency, action and work and a sound that will slip past all his defenses and settle somewhere behind his ribs. Tomorrow, everything changes. But tonight, It's just David and the ceiling and the crack in the corner and the song through the wall and the 2-pound phone that feels like it weighs 60. Tonight, it's just the before, and the before, for all its noise and restlessness and shame, is still a holy thing. Because the before is where we meet ourselves. The before is where we realize that something has to change. The before is where we finally admit, in the blue-lit dark of 12:03 a.m., that we cannot keep living this way. The before is not the end. The before is where we begin. David's phone buzzes. A notification. His thumb twitches. His arm tenses. The pull is almost physical. The ancient wiring of a brain that has learned to treat every buzz as a potential threat or opportunity. He picks up the phone. It's not his mother. It's not his ex-girlfriend. It's not his boss with an urgent 6 a.m. request. It's a news alert, something about a meditation app being banned. Something about frequencies and focus and unfair advantages in testing environments. David reads the headline. His thumb hovers over the link. He doesn't click it. He locks the phone, sets it face down. Stares at the ceiling. The song through the wall has ended. The neighbor's apartment is quiet. The refrigerator hums. The streetlight filters through the blinds. David breathes. In, out, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. His hand doesn't reach for the phone. His thumb doesn't twitch. His jaw unclenches, just slightly, just enough to notice. The crack in the ceiling branches outward. A river delta, a map of somewhere he's never been. David closes his eyes. Tomorrow, everything changes. But tonight, for 5 seconds, he's exactly where he needs to be. Tonight, for 5 seconds, he's not the person who needs to be fixed. He is just the person who is trying. And that, it turns out, is enough. The thing we call laziness is almost never laziness. I learned this from a neuroscientist at NYU in the fall of 2024, though I didn't understand it until I met David. She told me about a concept called sensory starvation panic. It's not an official diagnosis. It's just what happens when a brain trained on 15-second Instagram reels, breaking news alerts, and Slack notifications suddenly gets placed into a silent room and told to be present. The brain perceives the silence as a threat.
The train pulled into the Merchandise Mart stop. The doors opened. People shuffled past him. He didn't move. He sat there until the doors closed again and the train lurched forward and the song kept playing, and his breathing slowed to match the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. He missed his stop. He was 23 minutes late to work. He sent his boss a Slack message that said, *running behind. Personal thing? It was the first time in 4 years he hadn't apologized for being late. The panic didn't disappear overnight. The first time David tried the audio and it really didn't work. Left him more agitated than before. He almost deleted the file. He thought he'd broken it somehow. He thought he'd ruined the one thing that had actually helped. But that's the thing about cheating. It only works if you believe you deserve the shortcut. David's brain wasn't broken. It was just hungry. And like any hunger, it couldn't be satisfied once and forgotten. It had to be fed, regularly, patiently, without shame when the hunger returned. Elena told him, "You've spent 15 years training your brain to scan for threats. You can't untrain that in 15 days, but you can give it a different target." So he did. He started with 3 minutes on the train, then 5, then 10. He stopped trying to empty his mind and started trying to fill it with melody, with memory, with the physical sensation of sound moving through his chest. He stopped calling it meditation. He called it tuning the dial. There's a reason the audio spread the way it did. It wasn't a Coldplay. It was never about Coldplay. It was about permission. Permission to stop performing enlightenment. Permission to stop pretending that silence came naturally to people who spent their entire adult lives swimming in noise. Permission to admit that the path out of the cave didn't require abandoning everything you'd ever known, just finding a better torch. In February 2025, a wellness influencer with 2.3 million followers posted a video titled, "Why I Want to Use Bootleg Meditation Frequencies." She called it cheating. She called it lazy. She said that real transformation requires discomfort, that there are no shortcuts, that the journey is the destination. The video received 47,000 comments. Most of them agreed with her. But some of them, a small percentage, maybe 5%, said something else. Asterisk, I tried the shortcut, I'm still here. I'm still trying, asterisk. Asterisk, if it's cheating, why do I finally feel like myself? Asterisk, asterisk, maybe the destination is the shortcut. Asterisk, David doesn't call himself a meditator. He doesn't own a cushion. He doesn't have a practice. He just rides the train with his headphones on, listening to music that reminds him he's alive, missing his stops sometimes on purpose. He doesn't believe his brain is broken anymore. He believes his brain was always trying to find the signal. It just took him 31 years to realize that the signal doesn't live in silence. It lives in the static. It lives in the hum of the vaquet, the bark of the neighbor's dog, the distant piano bleeding through a thin apartment wall at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. It lives in the song you thought you'd forgotten, playing exactly when you needed to remember. The government didn't ban the audio because it was dangerous. They banned it because it was working. It was working for people who'd been told their whole lives that they weren't trying hard enough, weren't still enough, weren't present enough. It was working for people who spent thousands of dollars trying to fix brains that were never broken. It was working for the 5% who finally stopped apologizing for needing something different. David still has the Muse headband in his sock drawer. He keeps meaning to sell it on eBay. But some days, when he opens the drawer to grab a pair of socks, he looks at the headband and thinks about how hard he tried to be someone else. Then he closes the drawer, puts in his earbuds, and walks out the door. He's not someone else. He never was. He's just someone who finally stopped running from the noise and started listening to what it was trying to say. The file arrived on a Wednesday. It came through a Telegram DM from David's college roommate, Alex, who now worked in cybersecurity in Seattle and never sent anything unless it was important. The message had no text, just the audio file and a single emoji, a pair of headphones. The file name was cl.m4a. David almost didn't download it. His phone storage was full. He had 47,000 unread emails. His 9:30 a.m. had moved to 10 o'clock, and his 10 o'clock had moved to 11:15, and his 11:15 was now breathing down his neck. He was supposed to be preparing a Q2 presentation, but instead he was staring at a Telegram message from a guy he hadn't spoken to since last year's Super Bowl party. Asterisk, what is this? Asterisk, he typed. 3 dots appeared, then asterisk, just try it. On the train tomorrow. David locked his phone, unlocked it, downloaded the file. It took up 34 megabytes. He deleted 2 podcasts and a screenshots folder to make room. He didn't know it yet, but he was already making space. The Brown Line runs along the north side of Chicago, cutting through Lincoln Park and Lakeview before diving downtown. At 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday in mid-April, it's not romantic. It's not cinematic. It's 47 people standing shoulder to shoulder, holding poles and straps in each other's personal space, trying not to make eye contact. David found a spot near the doors. A woman's backpack kept hitting his elbow. Someone was eating a breakfast sandwich that smelled like egg and regret. The windows were fogged with collective breath. The chords repeated. He counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. A rhythm that didn't demand anything from him except presence. The buzzing stopped. David sat in the darkening office, watching the clouds, counting the chords, and felt something he'd forgotten existed. Patience. Not the forced patience of waiting in line or sitting in traffic. Not the gritted teeth patience of enduring something unpleasant. Just patience. The quiet knowledge that nothing needed to happen right now, that he could stay here as long as he wanted, that the world would still be there when he was ready to return to it. He stayed for 11 more minutes. Here's what no one tells you about the first crack. It's not dramatic. It's not a montage. It's not the moment you throw your medication in the trash or delete all your social media apps or book a one-way ticket to a silent retreat in Arizona. The first crack is almost boring. It's so small that if you blink, you miss it. The first crack is 3 sentences typed on a work document that have nothing to do with work. The first crack is missing your train stop and not apologizing. The first crack is a phone buzzing in your bag and your hand staying exactly where it is. The first crack is realizing that the voice in your head saying asterisk, this doesn't count. You're doing it wrong. You're not trying hard enough asterisk. That voice is not the truth. That voice is just fear wearing a lab coat. David walked home that night through the West Loop, past the expensive restaurants and the dog parks and the new luxury condos that all looked exactly the same. He didn't listen to anything, no podcast, no music, no audio file. Just the sound of his footsteps on the sidewalk, the distant wail of a siren, the low rumble of the L train overhead. He passed a man selling hot dogs from a cart. He passed a woman walking a golden retriever. He passed a bus stop where a teenager was dancing to music only he could hear. David smiled. He didn't know why. He just smiled. That night, he texted Alex, asterisk, it worked, asterisk, he wrote. Asterisk, I don't know how or why, but it worked. Asterisk, 3 dots appeared. Then, asterisk, told you. Asterisk, asterisk, what is that file? Where did you get it? Asterisk, a long pause. David watched the dots appear and disappear, appear and disappear. Asterisk, some woman in Brooklyn made it. Asterisk, Alex finally wrote. Asterisk, she was trying to help people with ADHD or whatever. Then some meditation startup bought it. Then the government said it was giving people unfair advantages in testing or something. I don't really get it. I just know it helps me code. Asterisk, asterisk, unfair advantages. Asterisk, asterisk, yeah. Like apparently if you listen to it regularly, your focus scores go up like 40% or something. They said it was basically performance enhancement. Banded in January. Asterisk, David stared at the screen. Asterisk, so I'm cheating. Asterisk, he typed. Asterisk, yeah. Asterisk, Alex replied. Asterisk, welcome to the club. Asterisk. There's a specific smell to a Chicago spring night. It's not pleasant exactly. It's wet concrete and car exhaust and the faint sweetness of the lilac bush that bloom outside the public library. It's the smell of thawing, of motion, of a city shaking off 6 months of gray. David stood at his window, watching the headlights stream down Randolph Street, and breathed it in. His apartment was quiet. No music bleeding through the walls tonight. Just the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional clank of the radiator, the distant thrum of the city doing what cities do. He thought about the word cheating. He'd been a cheater his whole life, apparently. He'd cheated at meditation apps, abandoning them after 2 uses. He cheated at silence, filling it with podcasts and playlists and the comforting noise of other people's voices. He'd cheated at presence, showing up to dinners and dates and conversations while his mind scrolled endlessly through tomorrow's to-do list. But this file, this audio, this ridiculous collection of stolen chords and borrowed frequencies, this was the first time cheating had felt like honesty. He wasn't pretending to be calm. He was just listening. He wasn't forcing his brain to be quiet. He was giving it something to hold on to. He wasn't meditating. He was cheating at meditation, and it was working. The next morning, David woke up at 5:47 a.m. without an alarm. This had never happened before. He was a snooze button person. He was a 3 alarms and still late person. He was a person who needed coffee before he could form sentences and 45 minutes before he could form opinions. But this morning, his eyes opened at 5:47 and his brain didn't immediately start spinning. No panic, no mental inventory of deadlines and obligations. Just the gray light of dawn filtering through his blinds and the knowledge that he had time. He didn't reach for his phone. He lay there for 10 minutes watching the light shift across his ceiling and thought about nothing in particular. When he finally picked up his phone, he didn't open email. He didn't open Slack. He didn't open X or Instagram or the news app that usually filled him with a low-grade dread before his feet even touched the floor. He opened Notes, created a new file, typed 3 words. Asterisk, today I will, asterisk. He stared at the words. They weren't a to-do list. They weren't a goal. They were on a resolution or an intention or any of the other wellness vocabulary that had become so familiar it lost all meaning. They were just words, an incomplete sentence, a promise without a predicate. Today I will. Will what? He didn't know yet. That was the point. The train was crowded again. It was always crowded. But this morning David didn't mind. He found a spot near the doors, put in his headphones, and pressed play. The rain, the static. The piano. He closed his eyes. Someone's backpack hit his elbow. He didn't flinch. The train screeched around a corner. He didn't tense. His stop approached. He didn't prepare. He just listened.
Have you ever tried to work in complete silence, only to find your mind wandering more than ever? Or maybe you've sat down to meditate, determined to find inner peace, but instead, you're bombarded with a million thoughts, worries, and random song lyrics. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and you're definitely not bad at focusing. The truth is, our relationship with silence is a lot more complicated than we think. For years, I was a die-hard advocate for absolute quiet. I believed that to do deep work, I needed a fortress of solitude. No music, no background chatter, just me and the task at hand. But I kept hitting a wall. I'd find myself staring at a blank page, my brain feeling like a pinball machine, bouncing from one distracting thought to another. It was frustrating. I'd think, why can't I just focus? What's wrong with me? That frustration sent me down a rabbit hole of research into neuroscience and psychology, and what I discovered completely changed my approach to productivity and even my understanding of my own mind. It turns out, our brains aren't really built for total silence. They're stimulation-seeking machines. Think about our ancestors. For thousands of years, survival depended on being acutely aware of the sounds around them. The rustle in the bushes could be a predator. The snap of a twig could signal danger. Our brains evolved to constantly scan our auditory environment for information. Silence in that context wasn't peaceful. It was unsettling. It meant something was wrong. So when we plunge ourselves into a completely quiet room, our brain's ancient programming can kick in. It starts to think, where are the sounds? Is everything okay? And when it doesn't find any external stimulation, it does what it does best. It creates its own. This is where the internal chatter, the random memories, and the sudden urge to reorganize your sock drawer come from. Your brain is essentially saying, well, if there's nothing out there to process, I'll just start processing what's in here. It's a phenomenon that scientists have studied in sensory deprivation chambers. When you remove all external stimuli, the brain doesn't just go quiet. It starts generating its own experiences, sometimes even leading to hallucinations. Now, your quiet office isn't a sensory deprivation tank, but the principle is similar. A lack of auditory input can make your brain noisy as it tries to fill the void. So if silence isn't the answer, what is? The key seems to be finding the right kind of sound. This is where the concept of auditory stimulation comes into play. It's not about blasting your favorite high-energy playlist, which can be just as distracting. It's about providing your brain with a consistent, predictable, and non-intrusive soundscape. This type of sound acts like a gentle buffer. It gives your brain's auditory processing centers just enough to do so. They don't go looking for trouble, but not so much that it pulls your focus away from your main task. This is why so many people find they can focus better in a coffee shop than in a silent library. The low hum of conversation, the clinking of cups, the whir of the espresso machine. It all blends into a steady stream of ambient noise. It's interesting, but not too interesting. Your brain registers it, is satisfied that the environment is normal and safe, and then allows you to direct your cognitive resources elsewhere. Like that report you need to finish. This discovery was a game changer for me. I stopped trying to force myself into a silent void and started experimenting with different types of sound. I found that things like white noise, which is a mix of all sound frequencies, worked wonders. It effectively masks other, more distracting noises, like a distant siren or a neighbor's dog barking. It creates a consistent sonic blanket. Then there's brown noise, which has a lower, deeper pitch, more like a strong waterfall or a steady rumble. Many people, myself included, find this incredibly soothing and grounding. It feels less harsh than pure white noise. Pink noise is another option, which is more balanced and sounds like steady rainfall or wind. The best one for you is entirely personal. It's about finding the frequency that your brain finds calming and non-distracting. There are countless apps and websites that offer these different colors of noise, and I highly recommend experimenting to see what clicks for you. Beyond static noise, there are other powerful options. For creative tasks, I've found that instrumental music, like lo-fi hip-hop, classical, or ambient electronic music, can be fantastic. The key here is the absence of lyrics. When you listen to music with words, a part of your brain's language processing center gets activated, even if you're not consciously paying attention to the lyrics. This can subtly steal away cognitive resources from the task you're trying to focus on. Instrumental music, on the other hand, can enhance mood and provide that gentle stimulation without engaging the language centers of your brain. I remember one specific project where I was completely stuck. The deadline was looming, and the pressure was mounting. I sat in my silent office, and my anxiety was just making the mental block worse. On a whim, I put on a long playlist of instrumental cinematic music, the kind of epic sweeping scores you hear in movies. Suddenly, something shifted. The music didn't distract me, it energized me. It gave the task a sense of importance and momentum. It provided an emotional landscape that drowned out my anxiety and allowed my ideas to finally flow. It was a powerful lesson that the right sound isn't just a background distraction. It can be an active tool to shape your mental state. This isn't just about work or studying, either. This understanding can transform how we approach relaxation and mindfulness. Many of us try to meditate in silence and get frustrated by our monkey mind. But what if, instead of fighting it, we gave our mind a gentle anchor? This is the principle behind guided meditations, where a calm voice directs your attention. It's also why listening to nature sounds, waves crashing, birds chirping, a crackling fire, can be so profoundly relaxing. These sounds are complex enough to hold our attention gently, preventing our minds from spiraling into anxious thought loops. But they are also patterned and predictable enough to be soothing. They signal safety and tranquility to our primal brain. So, the big takeaway here is to stop fighting your brain and start working with it. If you struggle to focus in silence, you are not broken. Your brain is just doing what it's designed to do. Seek and process information. The solution isn't to starve it of stimulation, but to feed it the right kind. My challenge to you is this. For the next week, instead of demanding silence, try curating your sound environment. If you need to focus, experiment with brown noise, instrumental music, or a coffee shop soundscape. If you want to relax, try listening to the sound of rain or a gentle stream. Pay attention to how you feel. Notice how your focus and your mood shift. You might be surprised to find that the secret to a quieter mind isn't a quieter room, but the right kind of noise. You might just unlock a new level of focus and peace you didn't think was possible. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with sound and focus in the comments below. And of course, if you want to explore more about how our brains work, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. See you in the next one. Have you ever had one of those days? The kind where the world just feels a little bit gray. The sky is overcast, not in a dramatic, stormy way, but just dull. That was my morning. I was on the 7:42 a.m. train, heading into the city. Just another Tuesday. The carriage was packed with the usual commuter crowd, a sea of tired faces staring into phones or out the window at the blur of passing scenery. I was one of them, slumped in my seat, feeling the familiar weight of the week already settling on my shoulders. The rhythmic clatter of the train on the tracks was the only soundtrack to my melancholy mood. To escape the monotony, I reached for my headphones, my go-to coping mechanism. I fumbled with the tangled wires, a small added frustration to the morning. Finally, I got them sorted, plugged them in, and hit shuffle on my massive, disorganized playlist. I didn't care what came on. Anything was better than the silence of my own thoughts. The first few notes of a song I hadn't heard in years started to play. It was an old indie track from my college days, a song I used to listen to on repeat while studying for exams or just hanging out with friends. Instantly, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. The melody, a simple, upbeat guitar riff, cut through the gloom like a ray of sunshine. The singer's voice, warm and a little raw, felt like an old friend clapping me on the shoulder. I closed my eyes for a second, and I wasn't on the 7:42 train anymore. I was back in my dorm room, sunlight streaming through the window, the air thick with the smell of cheap coffee and possibility. I remembered the feeling of being 20, when the future was this vast, exciting landscape waiting to be explored. Every lyric seemed to resonate with a part of me I thought I had lost. It was a song about finding beauty in the small things, about not letting the world grind you down. I opened my eyes and looked around the train carriage again. But this time, I saw it differently. I noticed the way the morning light, even as muted as it was, caught the edge of a woman's glasses as she read her book. I saw a young father quietly making his daughter giggle by wiggling his ears. I saw the intricate patterns of raindrops racing each other down the window pane. The world outside wasn't just a gray blur anymore. It was a moving painting. The very things that seemed so mundane just moments before were now filled with a quiet sort of beauty. The song was my new filter, my new pair of glasses, and everything looked brighter. The feeling stayed with me long after the song ended. As I stepped off the train at my station, the city didn't feel like a concrete monster waiting to swallow me up. The hustle and bustle of the platform wasn't an assault on the senses. It was a symphony of human life, people rushing to their jobs, to meet loved ones, to live out their own stories. I was a part of it, not just a spectator. I found myself walking with a lighter step, a small, genuine smile on my face for the first time that day. A woman pushing a stroller smiled back, a simple, fleeting connection, but it felt significant. Throughout the day, that feeling lingered. During a stressful meeting at work, I found myself humming the melody under my breath, and it centered me. It reminded me to take a deep breath and not get swept away by the little anxieties. When a coworker seemed stressed, instead of just retreating into my own world, I asked if they were okay and offered to grab them a coffee. That one song had somehow rewired my entire perspective. It hadn't solved any of my problems, but it had changed how I was facing them. It gave me a dose of resilience, a shot of optimism that was more potent than any caffeine. It made me think about the power of art, about how a simple 3-minute song can completely alter the course of your day, maybe even your week. It's a form of magic, really. A stranger, maybe thousands of miles away, poured their heart into a piece of music years ago, and on a random Tuesday morning, it reached across time and space to pull me out of a funk. It's a reminder that we're all connected in these strange, beautiful ways. We all have those gray days, but we also all have access to these little pockets of joy, these catalysts for change, if we just remember to look for them. or in my case, listen for them. As I took the train home that evening, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink. The world was no longer gray. I put my headphones on again, but this time I didn't hit shuffle. I searched for that song and played it deliberately. As the familiar guitar riff started, I looked out the window and smiled. It was still the same track, the same train, the same city. But I was different, and sometimes that makes all the difference. What's a song that's done that for you? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more reflections. See you next time.